I'm Nettie Edwards. I was born in Birmingham, England in 1959, and I'm an artist who makes anthotypes and chlorophyll prints. These are photographs made with plant pigments and photosynthesis. I'm going to talk about a project called Grave Goods and how I embrace impermanence in my creative practice. The Anthotype Process was invented by scientist Mary Somerville, who observed the reactions of plant pigments to light filtered through coloured lenses. As a woman, Somerville was not permitted to publish her findings. It was her friend Sir John Herschel who presented her work to the Royal Society in 1842. How do you make a photograph from a plant? It's very easy. Any flower, leaf, fruit or vegetable from which a strong colour can be extracted is good. Macerate in a mortar and pestle or kitchen blender, adding a small amount of water or alcohol to emulsify. Apply several coats of the strained liquid to paper. When emulsion-coated paper is placed under a phototransparency and exposed to direct sunlight, the parts not covered by a mask will fade. Each plant responds differently to light, and the process may take just a few hours or several weeks, depending on the weather. In the UK, it can take a long time. Chlorophyll prints are even easier because they utilise the chlorophyll pigment already inside the plant. Simply place a transparency on top of a leaf, place outside in a frame and leave the sunlight to do its work. These prints on nasturtium and bogbean leaves took just 2 sunny days to make. These processes require a patient and philosophical approach. Herschel abandoned anthotype research, believing it to be commercially inviable because he found no way to fix them. Today, UV reflective varnish is available, but it's not an ecologically sustainable option, so I choose not to use it. Collecting and recording the colours of locality is part of my creative practice. Each notebook is a record of a place at a specific moment in time. Something interesting I've observed is that plant pigments appear to remain stable until exposed to sunlight. These swatches were made in 2014. A print made with weeds from my garden. I grow the plants that I work with. This cycle of cultivation, making and letting go engages me with the many creative, philosophical and professional implications of material impermanence. It's interesting to explore the challenges of working with fugitive colour. The plants that I work with are my collaborators and teachers. Making anthotypes and chlorophyll prints reminds me that my body is inextricably bound to colour chemistry. I am a creature of light, dependent upon photosynthesis and therefore plant pigments for the oxygen I breathe and the food that I eat. During the summer lockdown of 2020, as an act of remembrance, I began repurposing some of my recently deceased art's belongings as materials and equipment for making prints. For instance, emulsions made with drops of her vintage perfume in place of alcohol. I named this project Grave Goods. Holiday souvenirs and paperweights were used in place of printing frames. Instead of bulldog clips, Pech secured intimate items from my aunt's daily life, pressed tightly against a postcard of Herefordshire cattle, a bill from a coal merchant, and an envelope that had contained a pension cheque. Shadows of small but important objects that are often mislaid, captured in flower emulsions, an envelope with Christmas stamp, a birthday card containing an apologetic message from another of my aunts, and a note that reads, "Today's milk on Saturday, please, and I will pay you then, thank you." A stocking on tulip-coated letter from a bank. Shadows of scissors, pins and pennies captured on a notice from the Water Board and Government Benefits Office in blood-red beetroot, bleached to pink. Death scatters the fragments of our lives, leaving others to rearrange them as they choose. Left, sweet pea, a rusted nail file printed on a shop till receipt. Centre, geranium, a suspender clip printed on a shopping notebook. Right, tulip, one of my aunt's stockings printed on a letter from her bank manager. Grave Goods references current academic debate surrounding curation and decay. What might be lost through an act of preservation? It also presents the printing process and the assembled objects associated with it as metaphors equally worthy of consideration as the finished print. When hearing me talk about my practice, many people express deeply emotional, even spiritual responses, often sharing personal stories of loss and death. Actors, musicians and chefs understand. They also spend long hours making work that ultimately exists only in memory. Chlorophyll prints made with a paper bag and plastic hairnet packet. Why spend so long making something only to let it go? What about selling this work? Maybe we can create a new model of the artist-client relationship. For instance, when a purchased print fades, it is returned and replaced. Leaf skeletons printed on nasturtium leaves. If we accept the ephemerality of these fragile botanical shrines, what roles might we find for them in our lives? For me, they're not containers of memory, as photographs are thought to be, but potent ritual objects of release. The decision to embrace ephemeral processes, rather than impose my will upon them, continues to inform and enrich my creative practice. For instance, my current research poses the question, what remains of a photograph if it can no longer be seen or conscious memory of it is lost? Dedicated to the memory of my aunt and godmother Eileen Dorothy Jones, née Cook, 1940 to 2017. Thank you for watching. To see more of my work, visit lumeleon.co.uk or Instagram @lumeleon.